profits. And ultimately, this is about reinvesting back into the economy. Corporate profits, we're big fans of when you see big corporate profits, it means that you're in an expansionary boom. I think this is all really strong.
Yeah, and I think that, people act concerned about AI and what it does to jobs, but I think the whole point is creating efficiency in the processes that are there so that people can do more value-added work.
There's no sign. I mean, you have all those anecdotal warning signs and every time you have new technology, even if you go back to when trains were there, or people were flying airplanes, is sort of concern. In electricity, it was going to wipe out jobs. Doesn't happen. Innovation, look, there's no shortage of great ideas. There's no shortage of opportunities. That's the great thing about, as you see technological innovations, you end up seeing people, entrepreneurs, businesses are thinking about strategic ways, creative ways to deploy those technologies, that capital into new things. We're getting expansion. It feels exciting.
Yeah.
Like it really feels like we're in an exciting time. And look, I look no further than what SpaceX is talking about, space commercialization, only available through the kinds of technologies, AI being one of those that we never would have seen. So it's really, I think, an exciting time in history. And it's great that it's showing up in corporate profit numbers because this means an expansionary economy and really strong. Let's get into the morning minutes.
We kick things off with a bold infrastructure proposal that could dramatically reshape freight movement in one of the South's busiest logistics hubs. An ambitious coalition is leveraging the proposed Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern mega merger to extract a massive concession, a freight rail bypass around Atlanta that would free up hundreds of miles of track for passenger trains and thin out the city's legendary traffic jams. Mark Hitchcock of Jacobs Engineering envisions diverting 80% of freight trains that currently run through the heart of Atlanta onto existing Norfolk Southern and CSX track in a U-shaped route around the city, opening capacity for 14 commuter rail lines. The project would require constructing about 12 miles of new track in Atlanta's southeastern region and carry a price tag of as much as $6 billion. But that's a bargain compared to the $90 billion a Georgia State House committee estimated last week the state would need to spend on roads by 2050 to keep up with growing truck volume and highway repairs. The Surface Transportation Board isn't expected to rule on the $85 billion rail consolidation until 2027. Over on the rails, a brazen cargo theft in California's Mojave Desert shows just how quickly high-value freight can vanish from a boxcar. San Bernardino County deputies recovered more than $150,000 in New Balance shoes after reports of people breaking into BNSF railroad boxcars near Daggett, an unincorporated community about 10 miles east of Barstow along I-95. Authorities arrested 29-year-old Leonardo Martinez Navarre on Monday morning after he fled a traffic stop and was pursued on foot by officers. BNSF police inspected the stopped vehicle following the arrest and confirmed the merchandise came from a boxcar. The case highlights how rail cargo theft can move high-value inventory from a rail car to a highway within minutes, turning a reported break-in into a major cargo loss investigation. Finally, the freight and trucking industries are mourning the loss of an American icon who made professional drivers part of her final business chapter. Country music legend Dolly Parton died peacefully Tuesday in Nashville at age 80, just 2 months after making a surprise appearance at the grand opening of Dolly's Tennessean Travel Stop in Cornersville, Tennessee. The appearance on June 24th is believed to have been one of Parton's last public appearances. The travel center, located at Exit 22 off I-95 about an hour south of Nashville, was designed specifically for professional drivers, families, and tourists, featuring truck parking, fuel, showers, laundry facilities, restaurants, and a dog park. Parton, who spent decades touring the country by bus, described the venture as a natural extension of her life on the road, saying she believed it would fill a void out there on the highways while bringing the heart and soul of Tennessee. The Cornersville location was intended as a proof of concept for additional Dolly's Tennessean travel stops across Tennessee and potentially elsewhere in the United States.
Well, heart goes out to Dolly Parton family. What an icon and what a great person that just represents not only the best of the world that she grew up in, best of Tennessee. Like it's interesting how, I mean, obviously being born in Eastern Tennessee, Pigeon Forge, that whole, she was born in Sevierville, that whole Eastern Tennessee area, but also she had strong connections to Chattanooga, our home. Her husband grew up in East Ridge, which is a suburb of Chattanooga, a neighborhood inside of the Chattanooga metro area. We're actually married in Ringgold, which is in Georgia, right across the border. I mean, 5 minutes from downtown. Right. So really, you know, someone that means a lot to the state of Tennessee. She may have been Tennessee's most famous hero and icon.
Well, yeah, and I think beyond her incredible success of singing, songwriting, acting, production, like she was, I think, co-owner of Sand Dollar Productions, which produced like Father the Bride and a lot of really other huge, amazingly important entertainment. She also, to me, her legacy is the philanthropy, right? And again, hugely giving back to Tennessee. So it's not just like Dollywood and all of that. That's super cool, but Imagination Library, which
you could
delivered 325 million books over the course.
And by the way, you can get a book if you up till 5 years old
every month.
And once a month they will send you a book.
Yep.
Did you participate?
I did. I did that for both of my kids.
And what kind of books?
Really age appropriate and a variety of topics.
Were they like random books or were they like known books?
Both.
Okay.
And I think, you know, obviously we had a ton of books around our house, but it was still cool. My kids loved that one came every month.
Specifically for
their age.
Got it. But these books you'd find at Barnes & Noble, or are they like specific books for?
Oh, no. Yeah. They were not only for Imagination Library. They were also
so publishers were essentially maybe a clearinghouse of sorts.
Yeah. But for kids who don't have, new books showing up, and I think I was talking to Zach about it this morning, and he mentioned that sort of the impetus behind this was that she said, if you learn to read, you can learn anything, right? And so really giving people that opportunity to open up their world. So that's amazing. She donated a ton to medical research here in Tennessee and Vanderbilt, a children's hospital. So just an amazing legacy of philanthropy here. And it's incredibly sad to lose her, but what more could you want in a life well lived than to leave a legacy behind where you really made the world better? Yeah,
for sure. I mean, Pigeon Forge is something that we know up in, East Tennessee. Also, she's got this new truck stop chain. It feels like Buc-ee's. I think there was a lot of conversation about Dolly going against the beat.
Well, Buc-ee's doesn't allow trucks.
I know, she does allow trucks, but it's interesting because there's this whole narrative on X about Dolly going after the beaver, just in terms of all of that noise that Buc-ee's has gotten. It's interesting because as an American icon, Buc-ee's has gone from, there's been a lot of negative story. I don't know if you followed the story about them suing a convenience store in Ohio that has the beaver as well, in a town called, I think, Beaver Creek or something, and they're suing them. So, but look, I think Dolly represented the best of humanity, the best of Tennessee. She was a fantastic ambassador for our state. It was a great story I read last night about when she first got her first break. She was 21 years old, and then she ended up leaving for greener pastures, ends up getting sued by the guy that found her, discovered her. She ends up paying back $1 million. Like, this is, 50 years ago or something. Pays back $1 million, or I guess it's been 6 years, pays back $1 million. And then later on in her career, this person, they lost their studio, had financial difficulties. She bought it and then handed it back for free. Just crazy. And the best of people.
Well, in her business, so like the truck stops now that have branded coffee called Cup of Ambition. Just amazing marketing, amazing genius, amazing business. And I know you're a T Swift fan too.
I was just going to say that.
But she owned her own music. Dolly was like she owned her own music catalog of both her recorded music and then obviously was an incredible songwriter, which was like really business savvy back then.
Like 9 to 5 Jolene, and also probably my favorite is Willie Nelson did a great cover of I Will Always Love You, which is a really sad, real painful song. I like the Willie Nelson version. It's been
better than Whitney.
I think, I don't know, there's something grovelly about Willie Nelson's voice that's there. So anyways, growing up in Tennessee, growing up country music, surrounded by it. She was a Tennessee fan through and through. So our heart goes out.
And she never took herself too seriously, even with all of this fame and success. That's probably.
But she owned her brand, and I know Taylor Swift's a polarizing figure for some people, largely due to some political things. Felt like Dolly understood the marketing, bigger than life personality. Just a lot of positivity. So it's just interesting. We could talk about this all day as Tennesseans. but we're not going to. We're going to talk about freight, which is what you tune in for. Our next guest, we have Pawan Joshi. He is the Chief Strategy Officer of E2 Open. Let's talk about trade. Not as not as wholesome, perhaps, as Dolly Parton. Pawan, welcome to FreightWaves today.
Great to be on. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Craig.
Well, glad to have you. Obviously, trade has been really for the last 10 years, but certainly under Donald Trump, it is getting a lot more attention. And no bigger call it storyline than the USMCA renegotiation that may never happen, or renegotiation that Donald Trump wants to happen. But this conflict between Canada and the United States is sort of playing out with a lot of aggressiveness on both sides of the border. Tell us a little bit about what your observations are.
No, 100%. I think there's a lot of posturing, on both sides around this, primarily around the redesign of, what the continental supply chain has looked like in North America, right? And historically, our countries and our trade and our manufacturing, our industries have been fairly well connected. Those connections got accelerated way back, when U.S. and Canada negotiated the first treaty back in 1989, which then transitioned over to NAFTA with the inclusion of Mexico, and then transitioned over to USMCA. These treaties are designed to be in place for an extended period of time that gives the industries and the supply chains, as well as the logistics infrastructure, time to settle down and think about things and build the infrastructure and deploy the capital. That is really under question right now, right? It is really how this evolves, and different industries are reacting different ways. And the challenge really here is every single one of these industries that has started off as being national industries have transitioned into more like continental industries, where borders have become more porous, primarily because of treaties like NAFTA and USMCA. And I think the backdrop of the last couple of weeks of back and forth between US and Canada is really front and center with the ratification of USMCA, or re-ratification of USMCA that has been declined this year.
Well, Pawan, I don't know that this is a surprise. Donald Trump did, however, when the original USMCA was negotiated, declare it the best trade deal ever. And now, on the campaign trail, he came out pretty much against USMCA, said it needed to be renegotiated. So, and then if you follow the whole story of Canada, 51st state, a lot of the antagonism of the American president against Canada in general, did we box Canada in where really they don't have a choice? I mean, it's a democracy, it's a proud nation. It's always felt a little bit, you talk to a Canadian and if you accuse them of being American, it's sort of like accusing someone from Fort Worth that they're from Dallas. I live there, so I know all about that. But it is in some ways an insult to Canadians because they feel like it undermines their own sort of national pride. Should we be surprised by any of this stuff taking place?
There's a lot of narrative and a lot of rhetoric around a lot of these things, right? So if there's and a lot of it is driven by the politics and politics du jour. And you rightly pointed out, things change over a period of time, and they have changed, even during President Trump's first term, then the intermediate break in the middle, and now his second term, right? And things have changed between the campaign stump speeches versus what happens when, the president got into office and actually put something in place. But at the end of the day, you're absolutely right. Every one of us belong to a nation, and we are extremely proud to be a part of that nation. And we look for, you talked about Dallas and Fort Worth. We are absolutely proud about, the cities that we belong to, let alone our nation. So, the rhetoric around, painting people into a corner and questioning that what they identify with is always going to be a negative connotation. But I would essentially say, look, there's a political dimension, there's a rhetoric dimension to that, but the fundamentals of how products and services get to market in both sides of the border fundamentally is dependent on that rhetoric, and we are seeing the impact of that on both sides.
So I think you guys are absolutely both right when it comes to posturing. And I don't know if you saw the recent post threatening to rename Lake Ontario, Lake America, or Lake America.
Ontario.
Yeah. But to your point, shifting to really this uncertainty and this trade deal, What should people be considering? What can they learn from previous tariff shifts? Is it still too soon and unknown to actually think about your sourcing, or is it something that people should be doing now?
Well, I always say you should be prepared for the worst, and I think that's really what people need to do and are actually doing. And our industries and our supply chains have done it in the past. You go all the way back to the liberation date, the tariffs that were imposed. The amount of goods that were pre-positioned into countries, especially the U.S., was enormous, right? It was pre-positioned because people wanted to bring in as much as you could. While you could, but before the tariffs kicked in. I think some of that stuff is already happening now and will continue to happen. We also got to realize that the fundamental changes around sourcing rules are much more difficult to unwind and change real time. Our industry. I mean, you look at just the U.S., Canada, Mexico. The entire supply chain network has evolved to this particular point in time over the last 30 years of a very stable period of commerce activity that was driven by relatively stable tariffs, very highly negotiated and understood rules and regulations, which essentially led pre-NAFTA led three different nations and three different sets of industries for those three nations to all become one. Right, you look at the automotive industry in North America, you see the concentration of engines and transmissions over in the Midwest and the Ontario region. You look at some of the components that are coming from Mexico. You look at the number of times the borders are crossed 6 or 7 times on certain components to get cars assembled that pretty much are sold all over U.S., Canada, and Mexico. That would not have happened. The kind of supply chain wiring and the infrastructure that has been put in place would not have happened if there were no tariffs or at least a stable period of understanding what the tariffs were. And I think that's really the challenge that people and our industries are going through. And I just use automotive as an example, but every single industry, you look at agriculture, you look at energy, you look at medical devices, high tech. All of them are going through that to really understand what does that stable supply chain for the last 30 years mean in this new dynamic environment that is primarily driven by treaties like now USMCA and NAFTA being upturned. So sourcing rules will take definitely longer time. Short term, people will move inventory over as soon as possible on either side of the border to react to it and at least have some runway to run the factories and the retail shops for as long as you can.
So that's actually exactly what I was going to ask. You referenced auto and then made brief reference to other specific industries that you think will and probably need to reconsider their sourcing strategies. Can you speak a little bit more to that? We know auto is going to have a huge impact. You mentioned energy. What else?
Automotive, energy. You look at agriculture. There's Mexico. I'll just use U.S. and Mexico as an example. Mexico is a very big consumer of corn, wheat, soy, pork, dairy from the U.S. And then U.S. is a massive importer of fresh fruit and produce from Mexico. Classic avocados, tomatoes, berries, peppers, and things like that. And what that has resulted in is both sides of the border now have a shelf that is, always available. The seasonal fruits don't tend to be seasonal; they're available throughout the year, and that is really a function of how our supply chains are wired. And we're not just talking about U.S. and Mexico, where there is a tremendous amount of collaboration, but stuff that cannot come from Mexico are sourced from South America or Europe are always available on our shelves. So we've kind of moved away from the fact that, hey, cherries are not in season, because someplace in the world cherries are in season that we can afford to bring in and put it on our shelves, and all of us enjoy that. So that's really the nature of how we need to how things have evolved. The same thing applies for electronics and appliances. We are used to actually having a flat panel TV in every one of our rooms, and probably even changing it every once in a while when we feel that it's not fast enough or the resolution is not sharp enough. All that is possible and we can afford that because the supply chains are being, because a lot of these appliances are produced either south of the border or in other parts of the world where it is economical for us for the product to be produced and for us to actually consume it at a price point that we can afford. These are all rewiring of the supply chains that need to happen, and sourcing rules become really important, as you talked about. But sourcing rules can't change overnight. They have to have fundamental infrastructure in place. Product designs have to be in place. Suppliers need to be vetted. All those things need to be understood. And most importantly, the logistics infrastructure needs to be in place to move something that was not supposed to move from that region at scale and speed that it was not designed for, because it was not thought about in the supply chain design originally.
Yeah, I mean, cold chain has certainly impacted our ability to move produce around the world to really drive a lot of that. I am interested, obviously agricultural products have been historically, probably the most tariff products are the ones that always sort of get people excited because there's a lot of national pride, farmers in every country around the world. Nothing more fundamental than farming. But it does strike me that a lot of the products that we consume from Canada are, things like petrochemicals, oil, energy, as well as metals and mining. It's the commodity complex that actually are primary parts of our consumption. And if you're going to have globalization, if you're going to have reindustrialization, you have to have those raw materials. I understand the political argument. I know a lot of this plays into the base, Donald Trump's base. It also matches his fundamental belief. But how do we truly bring industrialization without Canada's commodity sector?
No, you're absolutely right. And if you actually go back in time, even before NAFTA came into picture, the energy sector between U.S. and Mexico, U.S. and Canada has been very, very tight. You look at and it's not just the energy sector, the metals and mining sector has also been very tight. We share, common infrastructure on pipelines. We share common infrastructure on refining capacity, and even in patches, we share our electric grid in some parts of the country, north and south of the border. The collaboration and the continuation of supply chains have been extremely tight, for decades, spanning back all the way back into the 60s and 70s. And that's the reason why I think on both sides of the border feel that this is something that is not necessarily needed in terms of the broader rhetoric. And coming back to your point, I think at the end of the day, I strongly believe that if you actually bring manufacturing back into a country, let's just forget the U.S., any country that decides, hey, I want to bring manufacturing back, you got to realize that the raw materials and ingredients may not be available in your country. So while you may bring the final production in, while you might bring the second level of production in, you might bring the third level of production in, the raw materials, the eventual raw materials that you need, the ingredients that you need, may not be available in your country. And you pointed out the right example, right? If you're going to look for cocoa to make chocolates in the U.S., well, U.S. is not a major producer of cocoa. So where do you go to get cocoa to actually produce chocolates? You can produce chocolate, but eventually the supply chain has to go to the point where you get the raw material. And that's really the nature of how supply chains are. So at the end of the day, these things need to settle down to a point where you understand how much of that supply chain actually operates within your borders, how much of it you rely on others just because of the natural constraints of how raw materials and ingredients are distributed around the world, and then what do you actually settle down on supply chains. And if you take a step back and think about what has happened in the continental North America, that's exactly what has happened. When you lower down barriers to participation that are north and south of the border, you end up with the free capital economy deciding what is the best way to make that happen. And yes, there are tweaks and oversights that we need to put in place to make sure people are not, causing harm as a part of that capitalist thing. And we've done that a few times with NAFTA evolving into USMCA and USMCA further evolving. But fundamentally, you need to be able to have some form of a stable infrastructure, stable policy infrastructure, stable logistics infrastructure, and more importantly, a stable consumer infrastructure to be able to produce what you need to produce in the most efficient manner.
Well, Pawan, I know cocoa is one of those. Coffee, bananas are typically the foods that are commonly. There's other foods that are also on that list, particularly some exotic fruits that just don't grow naturally here. Is there anything else manufacturing goods are obviously really important when we talk about China specifically, we're talking about quote unquote rare earth minerals and some of the really critical things that go into these modern supply chains. But as it relates to Canada specifically or Mexico, is there anything specific that is just we're not able to source here? Maybe there's a cost to get it, but is there anything that we're just sort of out that we can't get without Canada or Mexico?
There's always going to be sources of supply that is available to us. If it's not within region, we can always, partner with somebody, some country, some friendly nation that we decide we want to establish a treaty with. So there are alternatives for most things. At the end of the day, the question really is at what cost and how long does it take us to establish those relationships? And once those relationships are established, how long and how extended is the supply chain in terms of lead times? Right, and how stable is that source of supply? Those are the things that our industries, our companies that operate need. One, they need to understand: can I source it from there? And if there is an advantage, is my country going to help me figure out the source of supply? If the answer is yes, is it actually going to have a fair relationship with that particular country that allows me to produce stuff in my country? If the answer is yes, is it a stable source of supply? Am I getting it at the right price point? And then most importantly, once it's established, how quickly can I move it in? If my supply chain relies on some material that needs to be here within 2 days, and my alternative source of supply is actually 2 months away, then I have to rewire my supply chain. I have to rewire my entire production. I have to possibly even redesign how I store and how much I store and how much safety stock I keep. And that is really the practical nature of supply chains. So there is. For most things that we're looking for, there will be an alternative. The question is at what cost and how stable is that source, and then how long is the lead time for anybody that wants to utilize that source.
I mean,
I know I'm giving you a generic answer, but I think that's the framework in which we need to start thinking about some of these things in order to make sure that we're having the right trade-off between alternatives.
But it feels like, and I know this isn't the primary, but it does feel like the conversation about national security, rebuilding manufacturing, we have to have it here in the US. When we have an adversary or a rival, depends on how you define China, having exposure of our critical supply chains, our materials in a country that is a rival, feels like if you study history, that doesn't end well. But it strikes me that if that obviously isn't the primary arching sort of motivation of the administration. But if we are going to bring reindustrialization, we have to have our neighbors in Canada and Mexico support that effort. And during the election when this was all happening, I was arguing that, look, I think tariffs on China make sense from a national security standpoint because you need to incentivize companies to bring back and reindustrialize. But when you add Canada and Mexico to the mix, you sort of get lost in that.
I 100% agree. I think when we're not, any nation cannot be alone in terms of its, destiny. It controls its destiny, but cannot be alone, leading the thing. You need friends. We all need friends, right? We need friends as individuals. We need friends as nations. And I think that's really the nature of it. We also need to recognize that we need certain things that are very critical to our national security that should be in our control. And even if it is not within our borders, we need to make sure it is within our control or influence with the group that we consider our friends, right? Because I use cocoa as an example, but that's exactly what it is. If fast forward, this hypothetically just say chocolate is a source of national security for us. If we don't have friends that actually produce cocoa for us and we can source it, in a predictable manner, in a secure manner from them, then we cannot rely on it. And our country doesn't allow us to grow cocoa at the speed and scale that we want. Then, we need to have those nations. And that's where the treaties come in. And that's really, if you think about going back to history, that's exactly how nations have competed. They've competed alone, but they've competed with friends that are helping them along. And that's really, I think, in many ways, the rewiring of it. Our exposure to China, exposure to nations is extremely high when it comes to national security. But I think we've not done enough about it over over the last 50, 20, 30, I would say 50 years or so, because we've let some of that manufacturing go away. We've let it go away primarily because we dealt with it from a cost perspective, economies of scale perspective. We thought about it purely from a capitalist mindset standpoint. The national security didn't come in until it needed to come in, and now we're talking about rewiring it, which is fine. At the end of the day, we've gone through a very stable period of globalization, and there is a time and place for the globalization, or level of globalization, to reset and recalibrate, and that's probably what we're going through right now. I would argue whether these tariffs are the right way to do it, and that's an argument that can be made, but that also leads into a different kind of rhetoric. But the recalibration needs to constantly happen, needs to constantly be reevaluated, and the results of that need to be put in place. And sometimes this recalibration needs time. But that's the nature of globalization and evolution of our global framework around trade and commerce.
Yeah, it does feel, I was born in 1979. We've had this sort of charmed life. You study history, it's not, this is an unusual, or has been an unusual time in history. But it does, I can make this argument, have made this argument, that we did outsource so much. I mean, the Chinese are incredibly thoughtful, 50 years planning, highly strategic. In what they were doing. You can't blame them, but we've also allowed ourselves, we've exposed ourselves due to, if I'm running a company, I've said this to people who have argued this, that blaming corporate America and CEOs, I'm going to respond to the same set of incentives. They had a fiduciary obligation to their investors to look for short-term gains, and ultimately it comes down to cost. They did what they had to do. The problem is that we now have this massive exposure. We realize that we learned it during COVID, that we can be, I wouldn't say held hostage, but we can be incredibly vulnerable and isolated by not having these products. And so I don't know that there's an alternative, Pawan, to really encouraging businesses to look at the Americas than some type of restricted trade or tariffs. You almost have to have some negative incentive.
Yeah.
But it strikes me that counting Canada and Mexico and all of the Americas out is just flawed policy.
I definitely. I mean, again, you got to be amongst friends, right? And we've been friends for some period of time, so there has to be a legit reason for us to say, look, I want to unfriend you. Kind of going back to our social media days. But I kind of want to react to what you just said, right? You talked about 50 years planning that China has in place. I mean, the system and the infrastructure and the governance model that they have allows them to do that, right? But it also comes with a negative, with a side effect, in terms of how you can question the level of freedom that the individuals have within China, right? There are pros and cons of that system. And I think, to your point, absolutely, if we're going to incentivize the free market capitalistic society is always going to incentivize on short-term gains and long-term strategies. I think the long-term strategies have to be bolstered by national policies that allow the right national security level infrastructure to be retained within the countries. I think that's the balance we need to strike. And for us to actually have the national security level in guidance established by the government, we need to have a sustained way in which that policy and that point of view is retained every 4 years in our system. It's good that it allows us to recalibrate our democracy, allows us to recalibrate the thing, but there has to be a continuity of purpose as a nation that has to transcend these red and blue lines that we establish for ourselves. And that is really, I think, what is needed.
Well, 1,000%, but I would argue that the AI data center build out is and look, that's private enterprise deploying. It's the largest capital investment in global history, the amount of capital that's going into this infrastructure. But then we get NIMBYism, something that China doesn't have to suffer from. We get NIMBYism that's going to block it. That's the fear, is this great, no pun intended, train of AI data center build out, of re-electrification, natural gas distribution, could be, I don't think it gets stopped, but it could be stalled out. I mean, in your home state, a very business-friendly state, let's put a moratorium on new AI data centers without some review. We know what happened with all the reviews. When you put reviews in place, it just means slow. That's the stuff that scares me, Pawan, and really concerns me, is we could lose the technology race, the innovation race, the greatest capital X expenditure investment in world history could be lost because of NIMBYism.
I 100% agree. And I think some of these things have to be put on a fast track to, around just exactly. There has to be some sort of a evaluation that needs to happen, but it cannot have the same speed of evaluation as with every other thing that gets evaluated the moment you say, put a moratorium and I'm going to look at it. Certain things, that's exactly what I meant, right? From a national defense standpoint, you got to say, look, we are in a race here. And if you believe that this is the right thing for us as a nation, then let's fast track this, especially when there is no government money coming in. It's all private enterprise that is actually doing it. Right? We have to be able to think about it. It's the same thing. I mean, we talk about electric cars. The way to actually win the battle in electric cars is not to put tariffs on imports coming in. It is to actually invest in electric infrastructure that we need in this country. You go out of the U.S. and you look at every single electric car and you look at core components coming in and you look at what is the best, most advanced electric car. It's not going to be an American-built car.
No, BYD. These cars. Have you seen these cars, Julie, on social media? These just like really insanely cool cars. I'd want one. I'm an American. I would buy an American car. However, I also like cool technology, and I'll buy whatever's the coolest. So Chinese are they're leapfrogging.
Humanoid robots coming out of China. Look at that. I mean, how far back are we in terms of that? I mean, these are some of the fundamental things we cannot be questioning some of these things. I mean, these are things of the future, how they will evolve. And most importantly, they're not the final place or final thing that we need. What is really important is the journey and the experience to get to some of those innovations. And that is the piece that we're missing, in this mode and with this kind of questioning a lot of things.
I mean, look, it happened nuclear is a great example of the lack of education, the ignorance of people, the fear. AI data centers is sort of the new version of nuclear. Like there's this NIMBYism, it's going to take all my water, it's going to drive my electricity bills. And look, I don't think the AI data companies have done a very good job. I don't think Sam Altman is the face of AI is doing a huge service to the AI industry when you talk about eliminating jobs and cybersecurity going away, Anthropic's whole thing, hey, we've learned how to crack it. I get some of that's marketing. I just don't think it does a service to their own goals to build out these AI data centers when you talk about job elimination. Ending, there's a 5% chance of ending humanity. Come on now. Anyways, Paul, go ahead.
But I also argue, just one last point. I would also argue that if cybersecurity is important and some of our models have been able to crack it, the same technology can be used by others to crack our security.
Oh, 1,000%. But I do think there's a
investment in that is super important. You need to get to the bottom of it, and that's how the academics think about it. It's not that you say no to everything. It's like you got to continue to ask the question why and how until you get to the bottom of it, and that's really where research and innovation comes in.
Well, there is an opportunity, I think, with the federal. Like we've talked to a lot of people, been critiquing the administration. They seem to have the right idea on AI data centers, electrification, energy production, energy build out. So we should give them credit in terms of, Donald Trump enacted the Defense Production Act, which is building out energy infrastructure. It, by the way, has gotten very little attention compared to what it should do because that build out will have remarkable outcomes. I was talking to somebody involved in AI data centers. Said, look, a lot of this stuff is going to go onto federal land. Like we're going to see federal, because they can do this. They don't have to deal with the states. They don't have to deal with the NIMBYism. And a lot of it is in the name of national defense. Is what happened in Memphis with Elon Musk's data center and production there. They said, look, we're not subject to EPA. We're not subject to some of the environmental review because it's a national defense thing. So it's going to be an interesting conversation. Powell, we're out of time. Unfortunately, we could unpack so many things. We will be back, and I have you back. Appreciate you coming. Enjoyed us. When we go back, we're going to talk about another major technology that in our community is getting some attention, maybe a little polarizing. That is autonomous trucks. We will be right back at
the drivers, dispatchers, mechanics, and crews who keep the world moving deserve tools that work as hard as they do. That's what Samsara builds, technology for safer, more efficient operations, made with the people who do the work. Samsara, built with operators for operators. Learn more at samsara.com.
The world doesn't wait, so neither do they. Wheels on the interstate, boots on the site, hands on the shipment. We build for the world out here, and we build it with the people who live it. Ideas from the field, made real by world-class R&D to keep the operation sharp, the front lines safe, and the world moving. From one cab to a global network, billions of miles, trillions of data points, every one making your operation better. And we never build it alone. Samsara, built with operators.
Once a year, the entire freight industry stops what it's doing and comes to one place, Chattanooga, Tennessee. This is F3, the Future of Freight Festival. It isn't just a conference, it's the largest festival in freight, built to pull you all the way in. The energy, the ideas, the atmosphere, and the people who move this industry forward. Over 50 speakers, 4 events across 3 days, founders, executives, innovators, and disruptors, all under one roof, all asking the same question: what comes next? On the main stage, the sharpest minds in freight take on the biggest questions in the business, the trends, the technology, and the forces shaping what's ahead. Then the clock starts, 7 minutes, no exceptions. The cutting edge of freight tech goes head to head, live, battling for best in show. When the time's up, the lights go out. And in between, the conversations that don't happen anywhere else, the connections that change the trajectory of your business, the relationships you'll carry long after you leave. Because when the sessions end, the festival begins. Live entertainment, unforgettable experiences, a celebration of the world of freight, and an energy you won't find at any other event in the industry. The leaders you need, the access you won't get anywhere else. This is where knowledge is shared, where deals get done, where the future of freight gets decided. F3, Future of Freight Festival, October 27th and 28th. The Signal, Chattanooga, Tennessee. We'll see you there. Register now at live.freightwaves.com.
Welcome to our Sonar Daily Update. Julie, what have we got on screen?
Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about tender rejections as a whole, and what I find interesting is that while other modes have cooled a bit as far as tender rejections go, refrigerated hasn't.
So let's just make sure our audience knows. We've got down here below, you can read it. You've
all
got
truckload.
Van is purple.
Yep.
You've got flatbed is this yellow.
Very volatile,
yellow,
orange,
sort of like
whatever, yeah.
Sort of looks like JB Hunt.
Tangerine,
yellow. It's
yeah.
JB Hunt. That's a JB Hunt color, right? And then down below we have the gray
is
which is reefer. Okay.
And
so
what is interesting is...
But then we have the major rejections.
This is all truckload.
Always in blue. The default, at least, is in blue.
Yes.
So, okay.
Okay. So what I think is interesting is we all know super volatile flatbed. We've talked a lot about that.
And that flatbed is really volatile.
But the refrigerated, what is interesting is when we get over here by where Craig is, we've seen that like everything is cooled a bit except refrigerated.
But
and
this is the time of year. It's freaking hot outside.
It's hot outside, but I also think that you can, well, let's compare volumes.
Go back. I want to show something before we go. So look at this right here. If you remember earlier this year, so the thing about temperature controlled is it's not, because a lot of times people think it's about reefer refrigeration. It's also like protect from freeze,
absolutely,
which is a big piece of it. So back here in February,
cold.
You saw it, but it dips. This is when you can almost see
moderate
the weather.
Spring weather.
You can almost see the weather in the refrigerated chart as it dips right here. And I remember when we were starting to talk about improving, accelerating conditions in April and May and just tightening in the market, really April, is I was getting some heat on X from some refrigerated drivers that were like, hey, we're not seeing it. The reason we're seeing it is temperatures were cooling off.
Yep.
Our temperatures were warming, but they were warming. The weather was better, not cooling off. But now what we're seeing is really moderating. Thank you. Nice climate weather. Right here is where refrigerated has been strong. Flatbed has collapsed. Now.
So refrigerated tender rejections are hanging around that 20 to 20.5%.
Now the reason flatbeds are softening is a lot of what drives the flatbed season, and it's happened again this year, is the construction market, the build out. A lot of materials are moving earlier in the year because summers, when the weather is hot,
before it's too cold
when
to
it's
build.
good,
Yep.
they don't like to build, particularly in the north. They don't like to build. In Florida, you can build year round. Tennessee, you get something like 10 months out of the year. But you don't typically build when
The ground is frozen.
cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's why flatbed is so strong in the first part of the year and sort of cooled off.
Yeah, so I wanted to compare refrigerated volumes to tender rejections as well. So volume is blue, only refrigerated, and tender rejections are red, just to see if they're kind of moving in tandem or if this does have to do with, I guess I have an additional theory that in addition to the weather, that refrigerated is sort of the least fungible mode with intermodal.
Well, it is,
truckload,
because you have to have a box. You have to have a refrigerated unit.
Refrigerated has to run at all times with
higher diesel prices. But the other thing is, like, what you end up with when you have refrigerated is when we saw the massive expansion of capacity, people aren't buying refrigerated units because the cost of that trailer is, sometimes is twice as much. And so really what you're looking at here, again, refrigerated rejection indexes is Schneider orange. I call that orange. It just looks orange. You think it's red?
Orange is red. I don't know.
It looks Schneider to me. And then up here, we've got blue. That is the volume index, following two different charts. And what you can see, what are we learning here?
So I wanted to see if they were really following in tandem or if there was potentially mode conversion here. So you could see that in some cases, volumes are going up, rejections are going down, right? You would think that as volumes go up, rejections go up, and then they're kind of normalizing here. So I do think that some of it is that volumes are maybe up a bit because of seasonality and the requirement for refrigerated, but I also think that tender rejections have remained higher for this mode than others because there has been that pressure valve release for over the road and the other modes with intermodal conversions.
Yeah, for sure.
This is just a seasonality chart showing that intermodal contract savings index to see compared to the last 3 years just how much higher it is right now.
33% right here. And these are years, seasonal chart, as you said. 33%. I think that's your answer on why intermodal is so strong right now.
Absolutely.
Is that companies are taking advantage of intermodal savings is really driving it. 33%.
Yeah, and I think that this little bit of a dip is not necessarily because intermodal rates have changed. It's because we've seen a bit
of cost of trucking and capacity and diesel. I mean, there's a lot of factors that.
But truck rates have come down a bit, right? So that's why.
So 16% is where we were. If you look at sort of last year, in terms of the delta between truck and rail. Rail rates are not increasing to the degree that truck rates are, which is really what's driving this expansion. I mean, intermodal is not getting cheaper, it's just not getting more expensive.
So then same thing, as we talk about intermodal, it's Wednesday, rail day. Total outbound rail container volumes still significantly higher this year than the prior 3 years. This is the seasonality again, showing the last 3 years. Blue is always current year.
It's all, I mean, the interesting thing is just how we continue to have record highs on intermodal. No shock to anyone that watches the show that intermodal's killing it. Again, that 33% is just a catalyst. It's continuing to increase all-time record highs.
Yeah, so I do think that there has been obviously continued mode conversion in the other modes other than refrigerated. Okay, so I wanted here to just compare the two together so you can see them in one spot, right? Outbound rail container volumes in blue, intermodal cost savings index in green. So you can see that volumes have still on the same trajectory, continuing to go up, but more than anything, the intermodal cost savings have continued to go up throughout the course of this year. So we should see more if the cost savings are as significant as they are, then we should see continued intermodal, which we'll get the traffic here shortly. We will with the ARR report. So we can basically, I mean, same story that we've been seeing, that we're continuing to see intermodal conversions. Intermodal is incredibly strong. Rejections are still strong across the country, really, particularly in refrigerated. But when you look... I'm waiting to see what happens next week as we head into Labor Day. The rejection rates get above 15%, 16%, 17%. We'll see. Want to talk about rail volumes to and from the U.S. and Canada? Sure. So with all of the trade noise that we've been talking about today, I really wanted to track to see if we could see anything in the data so far. I think it's too early to really see it, but I think it's interesting to know that it's here and it's something we'll be able to continue to watch. So we can look at total outbound rail container volumes. This is Canada to the United States for the last 3 months. A little bit of volatility. It's gone down just recently.
In fairness, though, we've been following the Canadian economy, Canadian rail volume specifically, because that's sort of the purest form of volume data. And Canada has not been experiencing the same level of activity in the bulk commodities as the US. Particularly in the metals and mining, there's these things that were a big part of the trade tariffs that we've had for some time, even before the USMCA rewrite or not renewal. That has been something we've been watching. So
yeah, and in the ARR data, we see every week that North American railroads, incredibly strong.
Well, American railroads are very strong.
US,
Canada railroads, not so much.
US
and Mexico
has not been as much. And Mexico has been relatively strong. It's just a small portion of the overall North American rail volume. So we have the same thing on United States to Canada, which I think it was interesting to be able to look at the inverse of that to see, again, a lot of volatility back and forth, clearly some seasonality, but it is beginning to pick up a little bit. So we'll see if tariffs have any sort of impact on that.
When we
do the same thing in our system by looking at to and from Mexico. So we'll be continuing to watch all of that.
When we return, we'll be right back we're going to talk autonomous trucks with Einride CEO. Stay with us.
In freight, again, your customer experience is everything. Every quote, order, and status update is a chance to win or lose a customer, but that will still, again, run on manual disconnected systems. Pallet is the leading enterprise AI built for the supply chain, automating costly operations from code to cash across brokerages, carriers, forwarders, shippers, and warehouses. Mallory Alexander serves 3 times more customers per operator, deliver an exceptional customer experience at scale. Visit them right now at pallet.com.
Doesn't wait, so neither do they. Wheels on the interstate, boots on the site, hands on the shipment. We build for the world out here, and we build it with the people who live it. Ideas from the field, made real by world-class R&D to keep the operation sharp, the front lines safe, and the world moving. From one cab to a global network, billions of miles, trillions of data points, every one making your operation better. And we never build it alone. Samsara, built with operators.
Once a year, the entire freight industry stops what it's doing and comes to one place, Chattanooga, Tennessee. This is F3, the Future of Freight Festival. It isn't just a conference. It's the largest festival in freight, built to pull you all the way in. The energy, the ideas, the atmosphere, and the people who move this industry forward. Over 50 speakers, 4 events across 3 days, founders, executives, innovators, and disruptors, all under one roof, all asking the same question: what comes next? On the main stage, the sharpest minds in freight take on the biggest questions in the business, the trends, the technology, and the forces shaping what's ahead. Then the clock starts, 7 minutes, no exceptions. The cutting edge of freight tech goes head to head, live, battling for best in show. When the time's up, the lights go out. And in between, the conversations that don't happen anywhere else, the connections that change the trajectory of your business. the relationships you'll carry long after you leave. Because when the sessions end, the festival begins. Live entertainment, unforgettable experiences, a celebration of the world of freight, and an energy you won't find at any other event in the industry. The leaders you need, the access you won't get anywhere else. This is where knowledge is shared, where deals get done, where the future of freight gets decided. F3, Future of Freight Festival, October 27th and 28th. The Signal, Chattanooga, Tennessee. We'll see you there. Register now at live.freightwaves.com.
Welcome back to FreightWaves Today. We're going to talk autonomous truck with Einride's CEO, Roozbeh Charli. Welcome to FreightWaves Today.
Hey, how are you? Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's talk autonomous trucks. This is the interesting thing is we have a very wide, disparate audience. Many truck drivers listen to the show, watch the show. We have a lot of fleet executives. Let's talk about the state of autonomous trucks. Where are we at in terms of point to point?
Well, I think, and thanks for having me on. I think we're at a point where, we've had a good momentum in on the regulatory environment when it comes to environment and the technology adoption, where I would say we and others are at the starting point of that inflection point where we're starting to see, live operations on public roads. We're in the, initial part of that, right? So there's the deployment of autonomous technology into real life settings is extremely complex and a lot of aspects to take into consideration. So I think we're at the start of that gradual journey and step-by-step approach.
So you have gone public. This was your first earnings call. What should we draw from this? I know this is an early stage company. People are betting really on the long-term vision, the opportunity here. How do you feel about this quarter?
Well, I think we came in, we went public on the 10th of June of this year. We have a really sort of good first half year as that we reported on last week, really executing on the strategy that we set as we were going public, right? Continue to execute on converting the $800 million or so of joint business plans that we set together with our customers into actual revenue hitting the books, and continue developing on on our autonomous technology and deployment. So it's been a lot focus on executing towards that. So we had a 27% increase in our revenues. We expect that growth rate to about double in the next for the next half year of this year. We increased our autonomous driverless hours with about 60%. So really executing towards that the plan that we set, very much focused on that gradual continued scaling together with our 30 plus customers that we have across 7 countries.
Yeah, I mean, some interesting announcements. Amazon's middle mile network, 75 electric heavy duty trucks across 5 locations. You guys announced that in April 2026 before you were a public company. Tesla, announcement with Tesla, 500 semi-trucks across your platform. Tell us a little bit about those announcements. Interesting that Tesla is partnering. They're not known for that. Any context there?
Well, yeah. So I think if we start with the Amazon announcement that we did earlier this year, that was on the back of having gone through sort of a proving period together with them and proving out our technology and working together with them, and then we took that next step in the relationship of an initial deployment of those 75 trucks in their middle mile freight network. We've started executing on that. We expect the majority of that 75 trucks to be deployed before year end. And part of that is also, of course, the order that we put in and the partnership with Tesla in order to have a good supply of vehicles that we can deploy on the platform. Tesla, once again, also a relationship we've had for a while, and as the Tesla semi deliveries are firming up, we decided to do a larger commitment to that and to deploy that on our platform. The initial order is about 500 trucks. We're expecting 75 approximately that to be deployed this side of the year, and targeting to have the rest deployed by end of next year. And this is US focused.
So I'm familiar with your form factor, what we've seen in photos of your picture of your equipment. But the Tesla, are they licensing the hardware and software? Like what exactly is this partnership that you have with Tesla?
So we're acquiring the Tesla Semi. So in our freight capacity as a service model that we deploy transport capacity, and we acquire the trucks. We finance them through third-party financing partners, and then we deploy them on our platform and execute on the freight for our customers. So in this case, we will purchase the vehicles. We will have third-party financiers that finance that, and we'll deploy that on our Saga AI platform and do all the planning and execution of those trucks on the platform.
Are you guys actually soliciting freight, or is this are you actually the carrier of record for these particular shipments?
So we're executing on the shipments, exactly, and we're using our Saga AI platform and in this case the Tesla trucks.
So you guys would actually be the carrier of record for these particular shipments. Is that now?
Correct.
Roozbeh, do you think that's the future of your business model? Is really becoming an autonomous motor carrier? Is that really the way to think of it?
So I think the way to think about it is, we've set up our entire strategy and business around the idea that, by having our platform that sits in the middle, the Saga AI platform, that's essentially ingest the transportation data, plans out the transportation, sets the execution plan, and currently we are also executing on that on that plan. In many cases, we have carrier partners that are executing on that transportation, and by doing that and building those customer relationships and that transportation data and vehicle data that you accumulate over time on the platform, and then gradually increasing the level of automation. So essentially deploy more and more autonomous into the freight networks of our customers, because we believe that the adoption of autonomous technology, first of all, requires more than just the autonomous technology itself, which is a crucial part of it, but it's also about the operational understanding and the way in which those vehicles are being deployed into real life operation. But also that it's going to be a gradual process and starting with certain types of applications, expanding the capabilities of the autonomous technology, the regulatory framework being built out, and then gradually growing more and more autonomous into the networks of our customers. And by accumulating this transport demand on the platform, we're well positioned to do that and decide where and when and in which case it makes sense to do so.
So the platform allows you to execute the planning and operation of these trucks, because it is very different than planning a regular truck, right? There's not hours of service if there's not a driver. Charging times are different. Ranges are different. Miles per day, I assume, would be different. So this platform allows, eventually via automation, for all of those operational things to happen specific to these electric and autonomous trucks.
Correct, and we're doing that already today. With the 250 or so trucks we have deployed on our platform as of today. It is the platform that allows us to plan and execute on the transport in such a way so that we can deploy electric trucks on the platform and be cost efficient and do so in a cost efficient way, taking into account some of the factors that you mentioned, for example, charging, energy cost, optimization of the routes, the utilization of the vehicles, etc. And that logic then also transfers to, so we deploy the autonomous trucks on our platform are planned in a similar way. The manual-driven trucks on the platform are planned on the platform as well. And then, as you said, there are differences in the logic when there's a driver or not in the vehicle, but the overall sort of building of that freight network happens on the platform.
So I am curious. You guys have been, FreightWaves has been around since 2017. We've been covering stories of autonomous trucking. Startups, companies have come and gone. Some of them have been infamous. Too Simple comes to mind as the most infamous of those.
Yeah.
Some have been just, poor timing, poor business model, lack of capital, lots of reasons. We're down to, I think, 5 companies of scale that are still around, that are sort of still operating. And there's a lot of startup and I like to say dreamers and schemers out there. You guys have been around for, the company was born on and around that time. What year did you guys start?
It's our 10-year anniversary actually this year. So we started in 2016.
You're at the same time as we got started. What has enabled you to survive? I mean, it was a washout. I think at one point there was 24 companies that we tracked that had raised at least enough money to talking tens to hundreds of millions of dollars. You guys have been around and made it to the other side, if you will. What has enabled you to do that?
Well, I think it goes back to the overall strategy of the company in the sense of we're with an early commercialization model, right? We're choosing to, rather than making ourselves completely dependent on the exact timing of when and where autonomous is going to happen, because as you said, that is it's a process that's been ongoing for a long while. We've chosen to build a business around an early conversation with the customers, which also means that you have revenue generation, you have the commercial opportunities locked in with the customers, and then gradually you execute towards that, which means that we've been able to build a business across seven countries with 30 plus customers, of the likes of Amazon and Heineken and PepsiCo, etc., and generate revenues and actually prove out our sort of product gradually, and also then making yourself less dependent on the exact timing of when autonomous deployments happens broadly, and tailored for this idea that this is a technology adoption that is going to happen gradually, and it's going to happen step by step, and it needs to happen in that way because of the complexity and the regulatory environment. So I think that concept has resonated well with investors, and has also allowed us to get through all of the ups and downs that have been in the industry.
So I want to ask a little bit about your recently launched defense business unit. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you're doing there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the concept behind that, the idea about that is, we've built what we call the Einride driver, right, which is our autonomous stack that we have historically put into our self-developed autonomous vehicles, and we've deployed them on public and private roads with customers. About 12 months ago, we launched what we call the vehicle agnostic software stack, essentially allowing us to take that stack and apply it into different sets of hardware platforms, be it in civilian or defense applications. And we started on the defense side with a pilot for a NATO allied country, where we took our autonomous stack and applied it into different set of vehicle, not a heavy duty truck. We were then part of the Swedish Resilience Initiative, where we're doing the same. We're co-developing a vehicle platform with our autonomous technology in there, and out of that came the sort of defense applications of the Einride driver. And essentially, the core purpose of that is remove humans from danger, especially in sort of transportation happening from forward base to front lines, for example, where you have a lot of repetitive transportation happening. It is a dangerous sort of area to be, and then by adopting autonomous technology into those vehicle platforms, we're able to help take humans out of harm's way. And since then, we've continued broadening that. We brought on General Keith Alexander, joined our board a few months ago. We've continued, our efforts in specifically in the US, in Europe, but also looking into applications in the US. We've tied partnerships with Sentinels as an example, and we're continuing to build that business. It is at the early stages now, but I think that it's a business that will provide a lot of growth for us over the next few years.
So Roozbeh, it's interesting watching some of the videos. China obviously has got a lot of really interesting. I mean, they're in many ways advancing a lot of the autonomous stuff really fast. I mean, they have called a friendlier regulatory environment for certain technologies. That's the great thing about the Chinese model is they want to do something, they can, and they will. Unlike Western democracies, which tend to be a little bit more stifled there. But I am curious. I look at, you've done this announcement with DAF. I'm a huge fan of Scania trucks. I just think they go so much harder. They're so much better looking than America conventionals. But I see these things out of China that look freaking weird. And it's do you have in the Ultimate, and you got the Einride thing, which honestly looks a little weird too. Do you have, so an American trucker, it looks weird, I'll say that. But I mean, what does the form factor look like? And I know that doesn't matter to you, but someone who loves looking at truck, as a student of this industry, do you have a preferred form factor that you think we'll see with autonomous trucks?
Well, I think we're going to see a plethora of form factors come up. We started off with the rigid version that you see here on the little miniature version of it behind me, which is a smaller truck, a rigid version. The next, we'll be launching additional generations of that with slightly different form factors. I think the moving over time into a tractor trailer setup, also, thinking about as you expand the use cases from the industrial type of flows that we're doing today into point to point or longer distances and higher speeds and matching into port operations, for example, and others, I think, we'll expand those form factors as well. And that is also partly, the reason for both being, a vehicle agnostic in that sense, but also the partnership that we announced with DAF, for example, will give us access to a different form factor, and they will make sense in different settings.
Yeah, have you seen Wolverine? Have you seen the movie Wolverine?
I think so.
And it's the autonomous trucks. I mean, Roozbeh doesn't want me to talk about this or necessarily agree with me. The autonomous trucks kind of go crazy.
Oh no!
It's a superhero movie, but they're like trailers. They're like chassis that have boxes around them, and I think they get hijacked or something. I don't know the movie. I just remember watching them.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, but I think the point is, the reason also why we started off with the form factor that we did, it was a number of reasons. Right? We wanted to build an autonomous vehicle platform that was built from day one for autonomous, which means built for driverless driving. So you don't need the cab in the vehicle. Also, as a way of demonstrating this is how we see the future of autonomous transportation looking. But if it also gives you additional space, it gives you more flexibility in terms of how you build up the form factors. But I think we're over the next 5, 10, X number of years, we're going to see different form factors and different making sense in different types of operational setups. So you're going to see that from us, and you're going to see that from others as well.
I think my prediction is it ends up more like the Port of Rotterdam, where you have these containerization, these sort of weird chassis that move around, and sort of looks more like that. I mean, you're closer to it. I do have one really important question. If you had to pick a form factor between the cab overs, the Scania trucks, the DAF trucks that are in Europe, or the American conventional, which would you own if you could own one of those? You can't pick your own. You got to pick between the.
I know. I absolutely. I mean, having grown up on the Transformers, I'm going to have to go with the Optimus Prime, right? So I'm going to have to go with the US.
The US
versions. But that's from that perspective, right? For the sake of my childhood, my 10-year-old self, it's probably that way I have to go.
I don't know, man. The king and queen of Sweden may contact you. They may be disappointed.
I might get myself into trouble right now, but
this has been recorded. I personally think the Scania trucks are the coolest trucks on the road.
Really?
Yeah, I just think the Europeans, maybe it's because it's like
it's foreign to us.
It's foreign to us. I just think they go so much harder.
I think that's probably, yeah.
I want an RV made out of that, so maybe it can be autonomous too. Roozbeh, appreciate you coming in, joining us. We'll have to have you back as you guys develop this. We'll be right back with FreightWaves Today. We're going to talk all about AI with the AI native company Nauta.
The world doesn't wait, so neither do they. Wheels on the interstate, boots on the site, hands on the shipment. We build for the world out here, and we build it with the people who live it. Ideas from the field, made real by world-class R&D to keep the operation sharp, the front lines safe, and the world moving. From one cab to a global network, billions of miles, trillions of data points, every one making your operation better. And we never build it alone. Samsara, built with operators.
Once a year, the entire freight industry stops what it's doing and comes to one place, Chattanooga, Tennessee. This is F3, the Future of Freight Festival. It isn't just a conference, it's the largest festival in freight, built to pull you all the way in. The energy, the ideas, the atmosphere, and the people who move this industry forward. Over 50 speakers, 4 events across 3 days, founders, executives, innovators, and disruptors, all under one roof, all asking the same question: what comes next? On the main stage, the sharpest minds in freight take on the biggest questions in the business, the trends, the technology, and the forces shaping what's ahead. Then the clock starts, 7 minutes, no exceptions. The cutting edge of freight tech goes head to head, live, battling for best in show. When the time's up, the lights go out. And in between, the conversations that don't happen anywhere else, the connections that change the trajectory of your business, the relationships you'll carry long after you leave. Because when the sessions end, the festival begins. Live entertainment, unforgettable experiences, a celebration of the world of freight, and an energy you won't find at any other event in the industry. The leaders you need, the access you won't get anywhere else. This is where knowledge is shared, where deals get done, where the future of freight gets decided. F3, Future of Freight Festival, October 27th and 28th. The Signal, Chattanooga, Tennessee. We'll see you there. Register now at live.freightwaves.com.
Today, we're going to move on to AI, another major conversation that's getting a lot of attention right now. We have Valentina Jordan. She is the CEO and co-founder of Nauta. Valentina, welcome to FreightWaves Today.
Excited to be here. How are you?
We're doing great. Let's talk a little bit about AI and supply chain. It's obviously a very important conversation, but you've built an AI native operating system for global trade. What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so it's actually operational brain. At Nauta, we've always believed that global trade is a mixture of 3 things: movement of goods, data, and money. And all of those 3 need to work in unison for actually things to happen. So in very practical terms, what this means is that we combine structured and unstructured data and create context, knowledge, and experience in which companies run on to have agents work and do their day-to-day tasks. So our belief is that without the data foundation, it's impossible for AI to actually work and bring ROI.
So AI agents, a big piece of your sort of go-to-market, a big piece of your business model. This is I wouldn't say a crowded space because the opportunity is just so massive, but certainly there's a number of companies that are doing that, trying to deploy this in supply chain. Why is Nauta different?
Honestly, for us, it's not about the agents. I'm going to be brutally honest. We think that agents are going to be commoditized. I'm not going to say weeks, but probably months. The real challenge here is the data underneath those agents. And especially in supply chain and global trade, that data needs to be all about the context, knowledge, and experience that operators have built over decades. So we're all about that AI native data infrastructure, which we call the operational brain. And the agents are the tip of the iceberg. They're the cherry on the cake, which transition us from this visibility and recommendation tools that we've been used for decades into true action and output.
So walk us through how is your model trained with this level of operational expertise and this clean data? How is it collected? How does it learn? And then how does it live and breathe and grow?
Beautiful. So, look, our implementation is super simple. We connect with the existing tech stack, which is super fragmented, super dispersed. So, ERP, TMS, WMS, OMS, the hundreds of thousands of dollars that companies are already paying for their existing tech stack, plus email, Teams, and all the unstructured information, spreadsheets, where operators are doing 80 to 90% of their work. That's fed through context engineering. So, it's basically learning every time a signal comes in, a contract comes in, an email comes in, and it's capturing and creating nodes of how the company operates. So I'll give you a very tactical example. If every Tuesday you're receiving arrival notices from your container from a specific freight forwarder, we already know that the brain already starts to learn that you'll be receiving this every Tuesday, and it's telling the agent what to do. So it's combining patterns, signals, context, knowledge, and experience into how every company works. Because if we know something for sure in global trade is that no company is the same. So there's no out-of-the-box solution here that would work.
So Valentina, you guys just raised a round. It feels like the United Nations of BMW I Ventures, Bosch Ventures, Hitachi Ventures, and Yamaha Motor Ventures, again, all global companies.
Yeah.
What were they investing in? What are they, how much, first of all, how much did you raise? And then what is the goal of the capital?
Yeah, Luke, so this is a very strategic round for us because, as you said, these are companies, leaders in industrial automotive with global footprints. And what they're investing on is the bet that the data, underlying data infrastructure is what's missing in this global conglomerates to actually put AI to work. We all know that companies have, and you mentioned it before, you need clean data, but data is normally fragmented and messy. So without building this foundation, it's very difficult for these global company footprints to actually see real value in implementing these new technologies. So that's why this round is extremely strategic for us. The capital is used for a global expansion. As the word says, is global trade, so is Nauta global. We're operating in over 8 countries and with 8,000 suppliers, 60 countries of impact through our clients. So our footprint is global, and having these partners, these backers, is super strategic for us in that sense. So it's both a validation that the thesis beyond just agents is the right path, and then second, for our global expansion.
So you've got big automotive suppliers and big automotive companies, but when I look at your customer list, it looks like a lot of health and beauty. You've got New Balance, L'Oreal, Moet, and Chandon. Did I say that right?
I don't know, but it's like literally
French.
My favorite.
I don't know. I always get that wrong. That sounds that's right. Maybe you, Valentina. Anyways, you've got a lot of like beauty category customers.
Luxury beauty,
big consumer brand and apparel. Luxury is a good point. But automotive is just, this is hardcore manufacturing. What attracted the automotive suppliers to your as an investment?
Luke, so yeah, we work with the biggest distributors of these brands, as you just mentioned, and we naturally, because of our backgrounds, I'm my co-founder, we started with food and retail, distribution, wholesaling, traders. And what we quickly realized is that the data problem and the data challenge lies the same across all of the industry. So expanding into manufacturing just became very natural. There is a lot of physical paperwork still going on the physical plants. And so getting all of this context, knowledge, and experience, centralizing all of their systems, fighting fragmentation, getting away from this tribal knowledge that affect IPs of companies is exactly what they're betting on. So there's definitely a special sauce coming in automotive, but I would highly say that this is agnostic, and what we're solving for is giving the intelligence, superpower and intelligence for companies around the world to be able to gather their data and successfully implement AI.
You know, Julia, I was thinking about, we've interviewed now 200 people, about half of them CEOs and founders. The interesting thing is, as we interview female women founders, oftentimes their first customers tend to be health and beauty. They focus on that, apparel. We've done this. Whereas a lot of the male founders are focused on other parts of the sort of industrial supply chain. Is there something to that, Valentina, in terms of the first customers you guys went after to solve which problems?
Look, I'm going to be super honest. I'm surrounded in a very masculine industry. We started with your pure logistics, operators that are firefighting 24/7, that every time we get on a call, how's your day been? How's your week been? And they're like, oh gosh, if I begin to tell you. So definitely, I love that you're recognizing that pattern. That wasn't the case for us. The real case for us is that one of our first use cases was around fill rate. So we found a beautiful niche around helping companies ensure that they were not having stockouts and overstock. And that was one of the first things that we did with Nauta. We heavily helped them in increasing cash-to-cash cycles, reducing perishables. So there is a pattern around how do you make sure that your inventory is healthy, and that's why you're seeing that tendency in our clients, not necessarily because of beauty, though I like that.
No, I just thought it was just an interesting observation. Again, it may not be scientific, but it strikes me that people tend to build in things they understand and things that they care about. As founders, we have to go solve it. And this is hard work, isn't it? Like building a business is like super grinding work.
Totally.
You got to love the thing that you're doing.
Totally. And
I don't know that I care about the
global trade.
What's that? Go ahead.
But especially in global trade, directly or indirectly, we all care because we want to see shelves if full. We want to make sure that the operations are actually working. And I think that the beauty is that in global trade is that no day is the same. Every company is different. Nothing is an exception because anything can happen. And I think this is precisely the magic of the current era that we're seeing. And what this round means for us is you're seeing big global companies that have been around for a very long time, seeing that if they do not fix their data infrastructure, AI is going to be very hard to implement.
So you mentioned stockouts and document handling and all of that. And so can you walk us through what your tool or if it's a specific agent within your platform, how it actually matches those shipping documents and prevents detention, demurrage, stockouts? How does it actually work?
Yeah, so think of Nauta as a membrane on top of your existing tech stack, ERP, TMS, WMS, OMS, plus email. Our brain is contextualizing this information, constantly keeping it up to date, mapping signals, understanding what's going on a macroeconomic level. Are there weather incidents? Did someone tweet something and it ended up changing the oil prices? Is the Strait of Hormuz closed? So it's capturing all of the signals. There was an earthquake recently in Colombia, which is affecting local ports. So it captures all of the industry knowledge. Second, it starts to map all of the SOPs and learnings from your internal company. How does your payment terms work? Are there any special treats to certain suppliers or clients? Are there any patterns? Are you paying? Do you have any early payment in advance discounts? So it's capturing all of these signals in an industry, in a company, and in a user level. So what's important for you? Are you monitoring a specific lane? Are you monitoring a specific product? So this is the brain always learning. And on top of that, we have a suite of agents that act on that data for specific use cases. So you mentioned a couple of them, 3-4-way matching to be able to do all the reconciliation and accounts payables. On average, we're identifying for clients between $300,000 to $500,000 caught on invoicing differently proactively. Everything around OS&D, overage, shortage, and damage. So all the claim building. Freight audit is a huge one for us, being able to map all of those costs for our clients. So depending on where the biggest needs in the business are, we deploy the agent always with an output in mind. So we always are working with our clients to understand what are your real business needs? Is it more around increasing sales? Is it protecting your margins, or is it reducing costs? And then we start to go down into what are the business and operational opportunities that will move those numbers. And that's where you put the agent. So we do not start agent first. We start data first, output first, and then comes the agent.
How does that brain build that context? So you mentioned weather events or other things, on the industry level that create the context that then can speak to anomalies in the data. Where does that context come from?
So again, it's 3 layers. The industry it's connected to public data sources, private data sources, and it's constantly being updated and reading all of this information, interpreting signals. In the company level, it's coming from your contracts, from your SharePoints, from your ERP, from the emails that are going back and forth, again, capturing that data and those signals. And then from the user level, how are you interacting with the agents? What automations are you building yourselves? What reports are you generating? And that learns, again, on a user or on a persona level, what is it that it's going? So we're basically capturing all of the interactions that are going on an industry, company, and user level, and that's how the brain is learning. This is all context engineering, and again, for us, it's just the secret sauce for agents to actually work, because we work with a lot of food distributors, and I can tell you, there's more similarities between a food distributor and a furniture or chemical business than there is between 2 food distributors, because every company operates differently, and that's what makes agents unique, powered by the brain.
Valentina, as you sort of think about this business, how much of this, in terms of your background, your upbringing, was driven by, hey, there's a big problem we want to solve? What exactly was this sort of inspiration for you?
Yeah, so being brutally honest, I come from the tech world. I've been building for 13 years, but I think you don't start building until you build in supply chain, because there's no happy path. Anything can happen. The whole credit comes to my co-founder, Rafa. He's a 3rd-generation Spanish immigrant into Puerto Rico, and he worked in his family business, which was a 123-year-old business in the food distribution. So felt the pain firsthand, tried to look for a solution out there, and wasn't convinced with that a visibility platform was actually what was going to solve this underlying data problem, and that's what we started to build. So we're a perfect mixture between tech background and operations. I worked at Amazon, I work at Rappi, last mile delivery company. So I have been in last mile delivery for a while, last mile delivery tech, but it was really having operators inside the organization what allowed us to differentiate from everything that is out there and understand that unless the data foundations is there, it's extremely hard for AI to actually generate impact and for operators to trust it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, appreciate you coming on, sharing the news with us. Congratulations, and best of luck as you guys build out your business. Hope to have you back as you guys, as you make those investments and achieve results.
Yeah, appreciate you both. Have a great day, and thank you for having me.
Likewise, thanks for coming on. We're going to be right back. We're going to talk fuel with Multi-Services CEO Aaron Decker. Stay with us.
Doesn't wait, so neither do they. Wheels on the interstate, boots on the site, hands on the shipment. We build for the world out here, and we build it with the people who live it. Ideas from the field, made real by world-class R&D to keep the operation sharp, the front lines safe, and the world moving. From one cab to a global network, billions of miles, trillions of data points, every one making your operation better. And we never build it alone. Samsara, built with operators.
Once a year, the entire freight industry stops what it's doing and comes to one place, Chattanooga, Tennessee. This is F3, the Future of Freight Festival. It isn't just a conference, it's the largest festival in freight, built to pull you all the way in. The energy, the ideas, the atmosphere, and the people who move this industry forward. Over 50 speakers, 4 events across 3 days, founders, executives, innovators, and disruptors, all under one roof, all asking the same question: what comes next? On the main stage, the sharpest minds in freight take on the biggest questions in the business, the trends, the technology, and the forces shaping what's ahead. Then the clock starts, 7 minutes, no exceptions. The cutting edge of freight tech goes head to head, live, battling for best in show. When the time's up, the lights go out. And in between, the conversations that don't happen anywhere else, the connections that change the trajectory of your business, the relationships you'll carry long after you leave. Because when the sessions end, the festival begins. Live entertainment, unforgettable experiences, a celebration of the world of freight, and an energy you won't find at any other event in the industry. The leaders you need, the access you won't get anywhere else. This is where knowledge is shared, where deals get done, where the future of freight gets decided. F3, Future of Freight Festival, October 27th and 28th. The Signal, Chattanooga, Tennessee. We'll see you there. Register now at live.freightwaves.com.
Welcome back to FreightWaves. Today, we will get right to our next guest in a few minutes, but first we wanted to ensure, as we've been talking about tech so much today, that you don't forget that the Freight Tech 100 Awards are closing on August 31st. So be sure to send your submissions in today. Don't wait till the last minute. We're really looking forward to that, and the awards will be announced at F3. So get those submissions in as soon as possible. With that, we want to go ahead and welcome Aaron Decker, partner and Chief Executive Officer, Multi-Service Fuel Card. Aaron, thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, Julie. Good to see you. Thank you for having me on again.
So tell us a little bit what is happening with Multi-Service Fuel Card as a whole. It's been a part of our industry for quite a long time. So tell us the latest and what's going on.
Yeah, so been around since 1978. We're the first fuel card to offer real-time transaction authorization for over-the-road trucking companies. Great deal of heritage with the trucking industry. And, as we'd announced, on the previous show in May of earlier this year, myself, along with 2 partners, we acquired the business, and we're really excited about the road ahead and doing a lot of great things in the early stages of this new partnership. I've been around the business and associated with the business since 2012. We actually just celebrated 14 years on the 20th of this month. But to actually kind of be in the ownership seat along with my 2 partners, it's a completely different feeling. But very excited about everything that we're doing, and the message is being well received, by our customers and prospects alike. So yeah, I appreciate you asking about that. It's been an exciting couple of months getting the word out and having good conversations with people in the industry.
Yeah, I imagine so. Congratulations.
So Aaron, let's talk a little bit about the state of fuel. Obviously, This has been a really interesting year. Diesel prices have now, at least retail diesel prices have now eclipsed their Iranian, I don't know what we call this thing.
Conflict.
Excursion.
Yeah.
I think is what has been described, whatever it is.
Ongoing.
It's causing an enormous amount of pressure, but it's not just that. I mean, the Russia-Ukraine war is doing an enormous amount of damage to diesel infrastructure. So tell us a little bit about what your state of fuel is today.
Yeah, I mean, it's no surprise or secret. We're at pretty elevated levels right now. I think our on-road non-discounted average price yesterday was in the high 560s, which is really impactful for carriers that aren't taking advantage of a discount program or have a good fuel surcharge program in place. It's not necessarily a crude issue or a crude crisis. We see oil hovering in the 80s. It's really about the crack spreads as it relates to diesel. And, the crack spreads usually hover in that, 15 to 25 range. And right now they're, north of $100. Right. And there's a couple of things that are driving that. Right. So we have as you alluded to, the global refining outages. the sanctions that are happening, and you're very astute to point out that the Russian-Ukrainian conflict does contribute to this. I think, here in the last couple of weeks, the Ukraine took out refineries that Russia had in place. So that just causes additional disruption and refining shortages, in this space. The inventories for ultra-low distillate are at lows that go back to the early 2000s, even the late 1990s. So that is an indicator that's really troubling for us. There's exports here in the United States out of the Gulf Coast are up, right? And the reason is they are supplying the shortage that you see in other parts of the world, right? And so that elevates fuel prices here in the United States, and it compresses refining capacity that we have. So, when you kind of think about it, you'll see on social media and other places, it's like they'll do comparisons about the cost of crude and why prices are still so high. And a lot of it is really being driven by the crack spread and how elevated that is. So, I like to say we're not in a crude crisis, we're in a refining crisis. And that's really where we stand today. And that's something that's hard, I think, for people that don't understand the industry or the business to wrap their heads around, because they're not accustomed to understanding that component of the industry, but that's a big part of it. And anything can disrupt it, right? So we talk about coming into hurricane season here, rolling into September and October. If something were to go offline or hit, critical infrastructure in the Gulf Coast, that could even, compound it even more. So we look at things like, El Nino that's happening right now. What effect could that have on, the hurricane activity in the Gulf and in the southeast part of the country and things along those lines? And so, other things that we want to take into consideration as it relates to the, the Q3, Q4 forecast as it relates to fuel.
Well, I think Aaron, we've covered the crack spread extensively on the show, but the average consumer, John Kingston, our oil and energy reporter, was on yesterday. The average consumer believes that all of the pressure on fuel prices is related to Hormuz. They just don't understand how big and significant. And I know you're an a fellow FreightX guy following the story. We see these horrific videos out of. I'm not trying to pick sides here, but we see these horrific videos, these massive explosions in Russia of just these warehouses blowing up. But we've also seen refineries be attacked by drones. I mean, it strikes me that is, according to at least John, would say that is a bigger issue in diesel prices than any of the stuff in Hormuz. And it sounds like you would agree with that.
Yeah, I would. It certainly adds to the component, the things that we've been paying attention to, indicators, right? And there's a report that comes out every Wednesday that you can look at, and it's, Hormuz tanker traffic, Russian refinery runs, and then, U.S. distillate inventory reports. And, what are those things telling us? And you're absolutely right. The things that are happening as associated with the Ukrainian-Russian conflict are really impactful for the industry, because it takes off refining capacity that was helping backfill other parts of the world that are no longer in place right now because of that. And so, the political unrest that we see right now, or the geopolitical unrest that we see right now in different parts of the world, are the items that are causing this disruption and these elevated crack spreads. And I don't know. We like to say, if we can find peace, find a ceasefire, not only with the Strait of Hormuz and Iran, but also with Russia and Ukraine, then we should probably see prices drop fairly quickly. Although retail prices tend to parachute down, going down, then immediately spike up when there's any kind of unrest. The other piece of it is, though, if we don't see any changes, right, I don't anticipate this getting better in the very near future. I anticipate, and I think the EIA agrees with that. They adjusted their forecast from where they were at in the beginning of the year to how things stand now, and I would imagine we're north of $5 for the the foreseeable future.
But Aaron, it doesn't feel like the Russia-Ukraine conflict is going to be resolved anytime soon. I mean, yesterday, at least on X, there were some reports that the CIA had made an impromptu visit, sort of a surprise visit to Putin. The American flags got removed at the embassy, according to those reports. It strikes me that this is escalating, not actually cooling off. I mean, that is the pressure on energy. I mean, you're talking about $5, north $5, potentially $6, $7. We could see this go up from here.
Yeah, trying to leave politics out of it as much as possible. It does seem like that there is a lot of, I don't know, where we see the end of this, right? And it's been going on since March of 22, which was the first crazy spike that we saw in fuel prices, when the whole conflict started, and it's still contributing, significantly to this day. I don't know where what the foreign policy is going to, where we're going to land on this from a foreign policy standpoint. When I look at the Middle East, I think some of the things that are happening with the back and forth are directly attributed to, November elections, and then the next 2 years after that, and it's kind of the long game, right? But the piece that I think everybody overlooks, as you have astutely shared, is the Russian-Ukrainian conflict for sure.
Yeah, we talked about that yesterday, is that it seems like it's off of most Americans' radar. The conflict's been going on since 2022. It felt like a stalemate for at least 2 years. This year, there's a lot of momentum, thankfully, because of the drone innovation by the Ukrainians. Are deploying utter hell on a lot of the logistics infrastructure and refinery infrastructure inside of Russia. But it doesn't feel like Putin can hold out as long as he wants to. And the Ukrainians feel like it's their national sovereignty and literally survival is at stake. So that doesn't seem like a formula for a quick resolution.
No. So, isn't it amazing what drone technology has done and how it's changed?
Well, we've talked about it extensively here. We had Tom Kloza, the founder of Opus, was on our show. We did an encore yesterday. We had him a couple of weeks ago. But, one thing he flagged, Aaron, I'd love to get your take on it, is what happens if we see drone attacks on U.S. oil and energy infrastructure, refineries and things like that? I mean, I got to imagine this is something that, these sleeper cell groups are thinking about.
I don't even want to imagine what that would look like and what that would feel like for, not only our industry, but just the American public in general. I'm hopeful that there's a way for, from a defense standpoint, that's something we've not seen yet, that helps defend against this, and is keeping our country safe, because it is terrifying. Thinking about the advance in drone technology and what it's able to do in conflicts. I think it's changing the face of battle as we know it. Now, certainly there's a lot of military experts that are a lot smarter about it than I certainly am. But I'm just hopeful that, the United States has technology. And I know that there are a lot of really smart people that think about this and work on this every day. And not just leveraging, people that are associated with the Pentagon, but, the outside market as well. And so, it would be catastrophic. I mean, it would be absolutely awful to have some kind of attack led by a foreign government on our infrastructure in the United States. It would immediately, cause a great deal of distress,
it does. We've talked about September 11, a drone September 11, something that we're not expected would really, I think, shock. I mean, the Dubai airport has now put up effectively scaffolding
cages
around the jet fuel tankers, because these things are incredibly, I wouldn't say fragile, but they're not meant to they're meant to hold things in. A lot of pressure. You disrupt it, they become bombs, and it's a quite scary situation. Obviously, they're in a conflict zone, subject to cruise missiles and drones, but I think these are intentionally for the drones themselves. But, like you said, Aaron, you don't need a cruise missile to take out an oil refinery. You don't need a cruise missile to take out a civilian aircraft. A drone will do the job. And that's the scary part, as we cover on this show, that these kinds of supply chain disruptions, we are in a proxy war in many ways around the world, and supply chains are the front lines.
Yeah, the thing that keeps me, I guess, keeps my stress level lower when I start to think about these things is, we've had some really big events here in this country that would have been, your prototypical targets for, terrorist activity or things along those lines. I know that there were a lot of people talking about the World Cup, and that would be a prime opportunity, for something to happen that would be, an action done by a terrorist organization or a proxy or something along those lines, and nothing happened. And I know that that's a testament to, not only our intelligence frontline, but also our military. And so I just think about the things that we don't see and we don't hear about, and the groups of people that are protecting our country. I just got to put my faith in that. Growing up as a son of an Army chaplain and growing up a military brat, some of the best people, that our country has, serve our armed forces. And so hopefully, knock wood, they've got it on lockdown and under control, and we don't ever get to that point where we wake up like we did on 9/11 and turn on the TV and see, catastrophic things happening to, a city like New York.
Amen. Aaron, I think that is a great take. I want to make sure we have a little bit of time to talk a little bit more about what you've got going on with your organization. We've talked a lot about misconceptions on what's driving the price of fuel here in the U.S. What's the biggest misconception that fleets have about how much control they actually have over their fuel spend?
I think sometimes fleets get into a set it and forget it mode as it relates to their fuel program, and they don't take the time to really do an analysis on savings opportunities. We talk to so many different carriers of all sizes that think that they've got a great deal, and then when we start to unpack it and look at areas of opportunity, we uncover savings and ways that we can help identify ways to save money. The other thing is really ensuring that your drivers adhere to a fraud protection program. When we see fuel prices spike, fraud goes through the roof, you want to make sure that you're leveraging every single tool that you have available to you to ensure that you're not falling victim to that. And just understanding that you don't have to be locked into one specific fueling pattern, right? There's a lot of different ways that you can tackle it. But things also about conversations about the way that your drivers operate and are, their acceleration practices and idle time and things along those lines. I mean, there's stuff that we don't impact and really have any kind of discipline over because it's not our business to monitor those types of things, but we can have conversations about it. And certainly when you're evaluating your fuel program, it's always a good idea when we see prices go through the roof like that to pull out the invoice, pull out your pricing, get a hold of your account manager or whoever your fuel manager is, and say, hey, look, let's have a conversation about this. And generally speaking, you'll find additional savings.
Aaron, real quick before we go, I'm going to ask this question because it was surprising to me. As I talked to a major fuel stop that said that a very small percent of drivers or carriers are buying fuel on retail prices these days. That really flipped within the last 4 to 5 years. A lot of new technologies have done it. What do you have a number in terms of percentage that you believe are buying on retail prices these days?
Oh, I bet you it's less than 10%.
The number I was given was probably an estimate of 2% from a fuel stop.
Yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that.
So it's interesting. I think shippers feel, hey, I'm paying fuel surcharge that's based on retail. Very few carriers are actually paying those rates.
Yeah, I'm gonna let them fight that out. It's probably coming at some point. But yeah, that you're exactly right. With the advent of technology, price transparency, more entrance into the market and the ability to leverage everything that's available. Even if you're a one truck owner operator or 1,000 truck mega carrier. There's savings opportunities to be had. But yeah, I would definitely agree with that. The percentage of fleets out there that are paying just 100% retail price is probably few and far between.
Yeah, well, that's good for anyone in this market because the spreads are so high. Aaron, really appreciate you coming in and joining us. We'll have to have you back.
Yes, thanks for having me, guys.
Fuel, one of the most important parts of our industry. It literally keeps us going. Let's talk a little bit about AAR Day because this is fuel. I mean, it's not fuel. This is Rail Day. Fuel Day is Tuesdays. Julie, another great report. I don't think anyone should be surprised. Is there anything in the actual AAR data that stood out to you on this report versus maybe last?
Just pulling it up. Obviously, it comes out after we're already on air, so it takes a minute to do. I mean, overall, U.S. rail traffic compared to this week last year, total intermodal units up 5%, total traffic up 4.2%. When you look at that year-to-date U.S. rail traffic, intermodal units up 3.8%, total traffic up 3.3%. So still showing strong growth.
There's nothing in this. I'm looking at the data right now. So petroleum and petroleum products much stronger in recent weeks compared to it was when we started the year. I remember watching that when we first started to see the Hormuz disruption. It really has sort of caught fire, no pun intended. But interesting that forest products are starting to ramp compared to what they've been trending. You see it at 4.4% in terms of comparable year over year. It was 0.7%. That's really related to a lot of the housing market. And I don't know if that's signs of strengthening activity, but it's certainly something to look for. The one that I like to look at, there's a couple of things I like to look in this data, but chemicals, which is really a real strong sense for the industrial economy, up 6% this week at a comparable to last year versus 2.4% last year. Year to date. And it looks pretty strong. So all around the bulk shipping data is incredibly strong. Let's move on to Canada because that's the one that I think is actually quite interesting right now.
And really, as we talked about with Pawan earlier this afternoon, however long ago that was today.
Doesn't it?
Grains, farm products, excluding grain and food, but specifically grain is really up
63.1%
compared to this week. Last year, and moderately up compared to last year.
Metallic ores and metals, a lot of that is going into the steel, and you see going into building out these data centers, obviously big. It does feel as if, looking at the Canadian data, that a lot of importers are trying to get freight into the United States, ship it, so that they can avoid these tariffs, these punitive tariffs that have been teased on both sides of the border. Right. And so, not teased, the Trump administration has implemented them. Canada's Carney has threatened to implement them sometime in September if there isn't resolution. But that's what I read into the data, is just how strong some of this rebound in Canadian traffic is, related to probably some advanced movement. Mexico, also interesting that their motor parts and vehicles are up substantially. If you remember this time last year, we started to see some moving into the third quarter, started to see the tariffs on anything related to vehicles, like Class 8 trucks specifically were one of those that impacts our industry. So nothing in here that I think surprising. Those intermodal numbers out of Mexico are incredibly strong.
Yeah, I was just looking at
33% intermodal traffic.
Units,
comparable to 14.72% year to date.
Yes.
So, but coal, are we done with coal?
I think we want to be done with the dirty fossil fuels, but we'll see what continues to happen with energy as a whole, right? Electrification, AI data centers. I don't know.
Yeah, we're not done with coal. We're just moving off of it. Natural gas is a much cleaner fuel. Things like nuclear. So good rail report. Again, it's just back to back. There's nothing that looks like it's softening in the data. This is sponsored by Trinity Rail. Our friends at Trinity Rail can help you find lease cars if you're looking for them as we move this economy forward. Don't forget to sign up for F3, the Future of Freight Festival is coming back to Chattanooga. It is Freight Tech's main stage. You're gonna meet the leaders and the people that you meet on this show, that you see on this show every single day will be there. We have a heck of a lineup this year. A lot of these announcements we haven't made about who's coming, but that does come in October. Great time of year to be in Chattanooga.
It is, and
We'll
it's
see you
coming
then.
up quickly.